Hey guys. Sorry I'm running late.
Hi Nathan, how are you?
I'm good.
Welcome here, and so we have today's very special guest, Nathan Blecharczyk. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Nathan, who's the CTO and co-founder of AirBnB. So on behalf of the whole HEC 42 crew, we'd like to thank you for being here and for being our mentor as well. Thank you very much.
So we roughly have 45 minutes, and we don't want to waste a minute of it. So let's start with a quick test we made specially for you to get to know you more and as you're your mentor. Okay. Let's go for it. You have to face the screen, and we'll give you two options. You just have to choose one of them that best suits you, but as quick as possible.
Okay.
All right. Let's shoot.
All right, let's go.
Oh, that fast? Okay, Uber. Batman. Bicycle. Hip hop. Drink. To be. Reality. Prince. Ruby. Twitter. Pizza. Fallon. All the right answers on the top. Whiskey. French kiss. Donald Duck. Try to trick me. Biggie. Angel. 2017. Gates. Golang. Zuckerberg. Silicon Valley. Airbnb. Come on. Harvard.
All right, thank you very much.
I got my alma mater.
All right, thank you, Nathan. All right, so we waited for this moment for a long time, and we've prepared an awesome set of questions. So please, guys, if you have any questions, we had a poll before, so just shoot your questions. We have roughly 40 minutes.
TikTok.
Well, then I started with the first one. We've heard that you announced Airbnb experiences or trips. Could you tell us more about it and how it's included in your vision for the future of Airbnb?
Sure. Our vision is to create a world where you can belong anywhere. And that really means allowing travelers to discover kind of the local authentic culture. And right now, if you visit a city and you want to have kind of a guided tour, it's very impersonal. It's not authentic. You're usually like on a bus with a lot of other people going to the same old touristy sites. What if we could match you with a local person who had something in common with you, a shared interest, and you could do an activity with them and a few other travelers? That's what Airbnb Experiences is. Basically, we now have experience hosts who are providing experiences based on their passions. And we've launched this in 14 cities. It's going to 51 cities worldwide this year. We have about 800 experiences live, but certainly by the end of the year, we'd have well over 10,000.
Hi, thank you very much. Airbnb was rated by Great Place to Work or by Glassdoor in 2016 as a great place to work, best place to work in the world. How come? And what does it mean for you to have to put emphasis on employee experience? Sure.
One of the questions I like to ask people when they come over to our office is, what do you notice about this place? And I'd say about 90% of the time people say, people seem like really energetic, really genuinely happy to be here. And I would trace that back to the culture. Before we hired any employees, we came up with a set of core values, and every employee we've hired, we've interviewed against the core values, and it's part of the onboarding process, and it's something we try to reference frequently whenever we do things and think about like celebrating successes and stuff like that. You know, maybe at a high level, everyone at Airbnb is there for the mission. And we have the saying we like, which is like missionaries, not mercenaries. So I think you have to be careful as you become successful, especially because there's a lot of people who want to like get on the rocket ship and get your equity and do really well. And while there's nothing wrong with that, they also need to really identify closely with a mission. They got to be really passionate and love what we are doing together. And if you put a lot of people who love doing the same thing together, it's a pretty magical thing. So I'd say that's why we got the Glassdoor Award last year, and why people say it's people seem so happy to be there.
Hi. Since you're the CTO, I have a few technical questions.
I'm not the CTO anymore, but go on.
Do you have the feeling that you've made some technical choices in the past that you have to assume today? I've read about technical debt. Could you tell us a bit about that and how do you deal with it?
There's no simple answer to that question. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of companies deal with, which is like you're in a race to just build and to achieve your metrics. And it's hard to prioritize going back and cleaning up. Usually it happens when you end up rewriting something completely from scratch. That's oftentimes how technical debt gets addressed. And sometimes you do that when you want to revamp the user experience. So you usually get a couple things done at once. Or sometimes you just set aside time and you go back and fix it. I don't think there is one single approach that we have methodically practiced. And I think in the early days we had a lot of tech debt, partially because we didn't really have enough engineers for what we were doing, and we were just always running as fast as we could. But it's definitely something worth thinking about.
Hello, I have a question regarding the hotel industry. I heard that 2 weeks ago you decided to limit the number of nights someone can book in Paris, but technically you are able to do so for a long time. So what's your position on that, and how will you really implement this policy? This is the first question. And the second one is, will you roll out this to all the countries where you are right now? Thanks.
So we're in 191 countries and 65,000 different cities. And generally these rules vary city to city. And so that right there is complicated when it comes to customizing your approach. I think it's also really tricky to enforce laws on behalf of the city because there are a lot of edge cases, for example. And so that's something that we've been really cautious not to get deeply engaged in. That being said, we want to be good partners to cities, and it's become clear that some cities need help. They want help. And so on a number of cases, we've made compromises with cities where we said, okay, we'll take this work on for you. So Paris is an example where we've offered that. We're also already now doing that in London and Amsterdam. And there's other cities where we've made kind of compromises. And, I think that demonstrates, how important it is to us to have a positive long-term relationship with cities.
And to balance a bit this relation with cities, are you trying to develop relations on new features such as trips? I don't know the name of. I forget the name of the feature to visit cities.
Experiences?
Yeah, experiences. Yeah. Sorry. Are you implementing some kind of partnerships with city representatives or with local authorities to counter a bit the effects you have on the hotel industry?
I think actually, if you're talking about competition, I think competition is a healthy thing. So competition is good. That being said, just with like what we did with homes, it's a little outside the box. I mean, most existing regulation is pretty tightly wound around existing business models. And so, yes, there might be questions about some of the new stuff. I don't think it tightly fits the definitions that are currently out there and the policies that are currently out there. But, just like with our homes business, we want to proactively engage with cities. I think what we found with the homes business is that nobody wants to talk to you at first because you're not a big deal. There's no reason why it's the most important thing of their day until one day suddenly they think it is. So when cities want to talk, we're ready to.
Come on, guys, I have a great entrepreneur.
Hello. Where do you see Airbnb and yourself in 10 years?
It's only been 9 so far, so it's pretty hard to extrapolate 10 years. I mean, the biggest change that we're undergoing right now is from being just about accommodations to being a platform for the entire trip. And so the 2 immediate products are experiences and something we're calling places, which is basically these insider guidebooks and some related features. I do think there's other things in the travel ecosystem that we could put onto our platform. I think whenever we do add a new category of kind of product or service, that we're going to make sure we do it differently. We don't want to simply resell what already exists. We don't want to be an OTA. We want to be differentiated. We want to make sure that we are providing authentic local travel experiences. And generally speaking, when we do things, they're people powered. So that's our general approach. I think 10 years from now, who knows what exactly that means. I don't want to probably share more than that.
I'm no longer a student, but well, they're a bit shy. I read that out of the 14 cities that are experiencing experiences, it's actually Havana where it's the most popular, the bastion of capitalism in the world. How do you react to that?
It doesn't surprise me, actually. So if you go down to Havana, it's pretty hard to discover things on your own for a bunch of reasons. One of which is they just don't have internet access readily available. And there hasn't been that much of a tourism industry that has been organic, at least. So you really need the help of a local to really experience the true, authentic Cuban culture. And I think people get that. And so there's been tremendous interest in experiences down there. We've been 100% sold out of everything we've offered down there. And then on the hosting side of things, it's a tremendous kind of entrepreneurial opportunity for folks who otherwise make about $50 a month. And so renting a room is generally $50 to $75 a day. And if they can offer an experience too, that's pretty powerful. So yeah, it's been really popular. I'd also say I think this is going to be true for many emerging markets. You know, many markets. I'm really curious to see how the product does in places like India when we launch that. Places like China. You know, some of these places where it's not easy to do it yourself.
Hi again. You said that you had the host in tens of thousands of cities. How many have you tried yourself?
All time, I generally average about 30 to 35 Airbnbs a year that I stay in. If you add that up over 8 years, you know, hundreds, you know, maybe 200 to 300.
It's a good perk.
Archie, can you continue with this perhaps? What's the most beautiful Airbnb you've stayed at?
Most beautiful. Most beautiful would probably be one in Hawaii, right along the water. Why are you guys laughing? Hawaii is cool. You got to understand it. From San Francisco, it's 5 hours to Hawaii, 5 hours to the East Coast. So it's like I can go home to where I grew up, or I can go to Hawaii. So yeah, I try to go to Hawaii like once a year. Most unique listing though, like my favorite listing, is this bamboo treehouse in Bali. It is stunning. It's all bamboo. It's made by a local artist who's very well known, and he basically started by building. It sounds like one thing became another. Like he built a bridge all of bamboo because he wanted to challenge himself, and then he decided to make a school entirely of bamboo, and then he made 16 houses around the school for parents of the students. And so there's this amazing community of bamboo homes, and they're huge. They're like 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, spiral staircase up the middle. Amazing artistry. You know, even the basin and the knobs are all bamboo. And when I stayed there on New Year's Day, it was just under $300 a night for a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom. Like most unique property I've ever witnessed.
Hi. What do you see as Airbnb's biggest challenge for the next 5 years?
I think we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. I think what we're doing is a jumping off point for reinventing all aspects of travel. And so I think probably like many companies, the biggest opportunity and challenge is to like to continue to innovate and to make the most of that. It is true, the bigger you get, sometimes the harder it is to do that. So I think that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about and we'll need to continue to think about.
Hi. What was the hardest thing you had to do when scaling the business really fast?
There's so many different ways to answer that. Are you more interested on the technical side or just like generally?
Generally, or more on the HR side, or?
Sure. Hiring is super tough, especially for engineers, which is very competitive generally, and there's not a lot of them. One tip there is to, rather than try to convince someone to work for you, convince them to have lunch with you, bring them over into your environment, show them around, introduce them to people, maybe have that segue into a happy hour or something. Build a relationship and get them kind of when their guard is down and get them interested, kind of pull them in and build a relationship over time. Same thing for hiring executives, actually, or even attracting investors. Don't go at them straight away with what you want. Build the relationship. So if it's an investor, say, hey, I'm not raising money right now, but I might be in the future. And if you want to hear more about what I'm doing or whatever, maybe we could get a coffee or something like that. So that's definitely one challenge. I think, and just to further dial this question in, like, are you more interested in when it's just like 3 people or when you're going through hypergrowth or?
Well, yeah, like at the very early stage, I don't know actually like what was the recruitment curve of Airbnb, but what was like the point where you really started to think, whoa, like this is going super fast, and like what were your thoughts at the time and the things you really had to like that what really made you stand up to the challenge?
2011 was a really big year. I mean, we definitely knew well before then that things were really taking off and going well. But 2011, it was like this inflection point for the company where we started the year with 35 people. We ended up with about 400. And that like basically broke everything in the process. Like the wheels came off the bus because we had like no managers. We had no executives. We were suddenly scaling the company internationally. Our customer service team hadn't really been robust before that. We had competitors suddenly. We had just raised $100 million. So that was pretty chaotic, to say the least.
Could you talk to us about the founding in 2008? What was your vision back then? And did you even imagine it would grow this big?
So I'll briefly kind of tell the story about where the inspiration came from and how it progressed. So the 3 of us that started the company together were roommates well before there ever was a company. And we were living together in San Francisco. And then suddenly the rent on our apartment was raised 25%. I decided to move out. I said it was too expensive. The other 2 guys wanted to stay, but they had just quit their jobs to become entrepreneurs, also known as unemployed. So they didn't have the money either. But they're both designers. They saw that an international design conference was coming to San Francisco. They saw that all the hotels were sold out. They had an idea. Why not rent out that extra bedroom to designers who might need a place to stay? Now that bedroom was empty because I'd taken all my stuff with me. Had no bed, but Joe set up an air bed. And instead of calling it a bed and breakfast, he called it an air bed and breakfast. So Airbnb is short for air bed and breakfast. They attracted 3 designers who paid about $80 a night for 3 or 4 nights. They made $1,000 in total, enough to help pay the rent. But they also all went to the conference together because they're all designers. And Joe and Brian showed them around San Francisco, gave them a really local experience. And it was a powerful weekend. And after that, the 3 of us got together. We knew we wanted to start a company together. We just didn't know what. But we reflected on that experience and we thought, well, that was a real win-win. Maybe we can do that for other people, other situations. So that's what we started to do in January 2008. our first attempt was to launch something super quick in the span of 4 weeks in time for South by Southwest, which is another kind of conference. And we did that. And at the time, the site was very simple. There was no search, there's no payments, there's no reviews. It was really just like a glorified Craigslist. And there was an experience that Brian, my co-founder, had when he went to South by Southwest. He stayed on the Air Bed and Breakfast. And overall, it was a good experience. His host picked him up at the airport, had an airbed set up at the house, chocolate on the pillow. The host's wife cooked him dinner. Everything was great. At the end of the night, the host asked Brian, "Do you have my money?" And Brian said, "Oh, I don't. Can I go to the ATM tomorrow and bring it to you?" He said, "Yeah, okay, no problem." Next night, the host asked Brian again, "Do you have my money?" And Brian had forgotten to go to the ATM. And so suddenly things got pretty awkward with the host and him, because the guy's wondering, who is this guy sleeping on my airbed, conveniently not paying me? And so actually, based on that story and also another story, which is afterwards, because at the time it was all around events. Like, you could only stay with someone if it was for an event, because we thought the event was necessary to build trust. But then afterwards, people were saying, "Oh, I'm going to London. I want to use your service. Can I use it?" And we said, "No, it has to be for a specific event." But based out of those two kind of anecdotes, we reframed what it is we were doing, and we said, maybe it doesn't have to be about events, and maybe we can make the awkward money stuff go away. Like, what if we make it just as easy to book someone's home as it is a hotel? Like, you pay online, the money gets taken care of up front, and it's much more turnkey. And so that's what we set out to do. So we started kind of in June of 2008. We launched it in August 2008, so it took 3 months. And what you see today is an evolution of that. So that's kind of how the idea kind of changed in the early days, based on a few specific observations.
I would like to jump on that, since you're talking about the very early days and we're here very young entrepreneurs. What were the first mistakes that you and the two co-founders did and you would advise not to do?
So we kind of had this very exciting launch in August of 2008 during the Democratic National Convention. We got like a lot of publicity and people actually stayed with each other. Like, we got a couple hundred bookings. So it was a really strong start. And then a week later, the crickets were chirping. Like, it was not a sustained business. It was just like ended up being a 1 weekend pop. And in retrospect, that makes sense. Like, we didn't have a critical mass of homes and there was a lot of other things that weren't figured out. But our immediate reaction to that problem was basically like, what are all the growth tactics we can invest in? So I was like building a referral system and coupons and all these things to try to directly drive growth. But the truth is, we hadn't really mastered product market fit. Like, the functionality was right, but it wasn't until later when we actually like curated the marketplace, curated all the homes by taking the pictures, helping to set the price, write the descriptions. Only then did it start to take off. So I think we were a little too focused on building kind of like typical internet features to drive growth, when actually we should have been doing things that don't scale, meeting our users, and really curating the marketplace.
Hi. What would you say is the best country in 2017 where you can launch a startup, and why?
I think the amazing thing is, in 2017, there's a lot of answers to that question, right? Increasingly so. Listen, I grew up in Boston, and I was an entrepreneur from a young age. And back around the time of early 2000s, there was not an entrepreneurial community in Boston. And so, the cool thing to do, like what all my peers were doing, was like go to business school, go to graduate school. And when I tell them about how I was just doing my entrepreneurial projects, they'd be like, "I don't get it, Nate. Like, what are you doing?" And that's hard. When the friends and the people you care about don't really understand what you're doing, there's some pressure there. When I went out to Silicon Valley, I experienced the opposite. It's like, everyone was quitting their jobs to kind of pursue their passions. And if you were like doing a high-paying job that you weren't maybe passionate about, people were like, "What are you doing?" I think the amazing thing today is that, like, in a lot of major cities around the world, there are great communities of like-minded individuals where you get that camaraderie and you get that support. And this is certainly an example of that. So certainly Paris is an answer, but I'm also really happy to say I think there are other cities where you see an ecosystem blooming. I think that's really, really awesome.
And just about Paris, you just mentioned this morning that you were launching a mentoring program at Station F. Could you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so I was just at Station F before this, which is super impressive, like the scale. I've never seen a single space where 3,000 entrepreneurs can inhabit. That's going to be truly remarkable. And we have now a partnership program between Station F and Airbnb, where we're going to be providing everyone with travel credit, because we know as an entrepreneur, you're probably inevitably going to travel, whether it's to meet customers, meet investors, etc. So maybe we can help defer the costs just a little bit. We're also, with them, creating a new experience on the Airbnb platform where entrepreneurs from other parts of the world can come to Paris and be plugged into the community for a weekend or a few days, which I think is also super awesome, because think about the people who are less fortunate than you, where they're kind of maybe in a more small area that doesn't have the same community, to come here and be inspired by what everyone's doing. I'm really excited to see that.
Hi. I have a question concerning the trust in the beginning. You said that it was a bit, for me, like when my first friend told me he rented his house on Airbnb. I was like, how do you dare? Do you know the person who's going to come? And how did you deal with it marketing-wise to make the fact of giving your house to a stranger so normal?
It's a really good question. Like, it seems like in retrospect such an obvious idea, but at the time everybody thought it was the most crazy idea ever, like a terrible idea. Not just like crazy, but terrible. How can you trust a stranger in your home? And so, I mean, the most obvious and certainly important key features was the payments and the reviews. So handle the money up front. And because the owner doesn't get paid unless the guest shows up and is happy, that immediately kind of created the right incentive there. But also the fact that at the end of the stay, the guest reviewed the host and the host reviewed the guest. It's a two-way review system. That aligned incentives in a very powerful way. Simple system, but really worked well. There were other more subtle things too, though, like the design of the website. My two co-founders are designers. It was pretty unusual back then to have like 3 co-founders and only one be technical. But I think it really helped in a lot of ways, including the design. The design was very friendly. It also emphasized the people who are offering the space. So in the early days, the profile of the picture of the person was the same size as the picture of the room. We really want to emphasize like who's the person behind it, tell you quite a bit about them. And we felt that built trust. It wasn't a site where everything was anonymous. I don't think that would have been possible, though, a few years earlier. Like, I don't think it was until Facebook was ubiquitous that people believed that people could have online identities that really represented a true person. Because before Facebook, MySpace, like screen names, no real profile pictures. So we also had like the right timing, I would say. But design played a critical role. Now, that was just to start, though, like for early adopters. As we've gone more mainstream, we've tried to up the ante by providing customer support. Certainly the professional photography also helped, the curation. So it looked like a place, like a serious place, not a place that was just, unorganized. And yeah, it evolved over time, but those were like the key things in the early days.
Hi again. You're here now as a mentor speaking to us. But when you started as an entrepreneur, which person from a mentorial perspective helped you the most? And are there maybe any books you read in the beginning of your career that influenced you a lot?
The mentor was Michael Seibel, co-founder and CEO of Justin.tv, who was later acquired. He is now running Y Combinator, actually. But Michael was a great mentor for us because he was who we wanted to be and just a couple years ahead of us. So he wasn't like so far down the road that we couldn't relate. He was really probably just 1 or 2 years ahead. And we'd go over to his company's office and there'd be like 10 guys with like actual office space, because we were just the three co-founders in the living room. You know, we didn't have office space, we didn't have employees, and so when we saw that he had an office and he had a few people working for him, like we're like, oh, that could be us. Like it's actually, you could actually dream that. You know, and Michael was great. You know, he didn't want anything from us. You know, he didn't want equity. He didn't want any kind of deal. He just felt like we had a dream and drive, and thought it an okay use of his time to give us advice. You know, every other week or so. And I think that was a really great thing. You know, he was probably our only real mentor for the first year. It wasn't until we started being more successful that we could attract other mentors. But, you know, I think, you know, so many people, well, I don't know, you tell me, but sometimes you seek mentors who are like kind of professional mentors who want something from you, and you know, that can be okay. But I think, you know, I think there's also a lot of folks out there who are willing to be kind of generous with their time. I mean, I try to be. It's hard for me to get into like a formal arrangement. But I love to like do events like this when I can kind of talk to a group in a group setting. And then, you know, I try to be generous when people reach out to me with specific questions, making time for that.
Hello. Airbnb is often cited for its very user-centric approach to product development. So how, like, ever since you started, how do you make sure that you always give the best experience to your customers? And what does it mean to be user-centric at Airbnb?
I'll give a lot of credit to Joe and Brian on this, because their background in design and design thinking, I think, really helped. You know, it really starts with understanding the user really well. So like even in the early days, like Joe and Brian would go to New York, meet the users in their own apartment, and bring their video camera and just like film them, talking to them, looking at how they're interacting with the website. And so, you know, at Airbnb today, user research definitely plays a big role to like understanding the nuances of things. I think, you know, thinking outside the box is obviously like pretty important when you're doing something new. And so there's certain exercises you can do when brainstorming to promote, you know, crazy ideas. You know, so we always would do a lot of that when coming up with new things. We wouldn't just jump to the obvious solution. We'd try to take you know, evaluate a lot of different ideas. So I think, you know, things like that.
Just a little announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a great figure who just joined us. Please welcome Mr. Xavier Niel.
Sorry, I have just to wait behind. I'm sorry to come and to stop and to interrupt you. Thank you very much. But we are very happy to have you here today.
No, I'm thrilled to be here too.
Brian Chesky came, I don't remember, 3 years ago, no? When Brian Chesky came? 2 years ago, something. Yeah. And he liked the school, and thank you. We are very happy now to have you both came here.
It's pretty impressive, and I saw
great honor to have you.
I saw the other facility just a little while ago.
So last year I was in the same place than you. So I was the first. I don't know how you say the name. Parrain? Patron. Sorry. So last year I was the patron. I'm very happy to have you be the next one after me. So I'm very proud and very happy to have you in Paris. I've heard you interview this morning on Europe 1, and the journalist was not very. How can I say that?
He had a lot of questions about taxes.
Yeah. So. The guy is coming. Hello. In the morning. I would like to talk to you about Airbnb. Okay, let's talk about taxes. Okay. So I'm so sorry. It's not the real image of France. Okay, I want you to keep another image of France, and let's talk to this guy because they are the real France. Okay, not the guy with who you talked this morning. So I don't say that for you team. We organize the interviews meeting, but they're the real friends. You have to talk with them. They are far better than the guy we met this morning. And sorry for having this experience this morning with this guy. So thanks. Thank you for coming. And
my pleasure.
I'll let you talk. You. Yeah. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue with the questions. We have one just over here. Hi.
Do you think Airbnb could have become Airbnb without going through the YC?
Not at the point we were as a team. So at the end of 2008, we'd been working on it for 12 months. We had been unsuccessful raising any money, and all the metrics were kind of flat. They weren't growing. And we were basically saying, when do you know it's time to quit? Because things aren't going well. And there's 3 of us, and no one of us wanted to walk away and leave the other guys hanging. And so the decision was going to be a consensus decision. And what we agreed to as a consensus was that, okay, we're going to give it one more shot. And we're going to do that by applying to Y Combinator, being super focused during the course of the program. And if by the end of the program we're not in a better place, then we've all kind of pre-committed to quit. And so that was the precondition to going to Y Combinator. And it was during Y Combinator that everything changed. So for us, it is very tightly wound to Y Combinator. And it did turn out that we got some really valuable advice that I don't think we would have gotten otherwise, which was do things that don't scale, because it's better to have 100 users that love you than 1 million users who like you. So go meet your users and create some evangelists out of them. And so we went to New York and did that.
Hi. This is a very different kind of question. Just to figure out how do you use data science inside Airbnb, and if you use it at all, because I don't see
we do use it a lot.
Yeah.
We probably have 100 data scientists now, and I'm really proud of what we've built on the data science front. A lot of it's been open source. Actually, you can read about it online. There's some really powerful tools that are we've made freely available. We hired our first data science before it was called data science. Our first data scientist before that term was common. He was probably our number 6th or 8th employee, so like super early on. And it was because I knew we were sitting on a lot of data, like we were a marketplace, and understanding the data was going to be important. And so that's the state of data science. Do you want me to go deeper? Or was there a more specific question?
Yeah, did you use it just for the database, or are you using algorithm to maybe help you get the better apartment for the better search?
Right. So how do we use data science?
Yeah, I don't know if it's private or no.
Yeah. So every single thing that we launch, every single change that we make, we tend to A/B test it. So we've made it really easy for developers to basically put in hooks that are conditional to make their change either be turned on or off for a certain set of users. And then the system basically will let, say, 20% of the users see it, maybe 80% not, or however you configure it, and then tell you the statistical significant change on all the key metrics. And sometimes you have to run the experiment for months, depending on how minute the impact is, or what subset of the population it impacts. At any given time, we're running hundreds and hundreds of simultaneous experiments. So we have a really good experimental framework. That's definitely one thing. Some of the key things that use big data are our search algorithm. So there's a lot of machine learning that goes into optimizing the search results for conversion. You do a search in Paris, you see 60,000 things. Every single thing is different. How do you decide which one goes where? And of course, that varies based on some of the inputs as well. So that's one thing. Also, trust and safety. So in the background, we score every single user and property and reservation with a trust score. And things that don't have a sufficient trust score, we then ask that person to do something more to enhance their trust score. And so that's all powered by machine learning and a lot of data. And the data is not just what you tell us, but also how you behave and things like that. So those are probably the 2 most important ways in which we're using data, algorithms on top of the big data.
All right, 2 more questions before we move on.
Hello.
Hey.
The first day they did a little game. It's called the 5Y, and they did it with one member of my group. You're here, and I want to do it with you.
Oh boy. Sounds fun.
Okay.
Okay, let's play.
So it's easy. I will ask questions and you will answer. It's the same. We will see. So, why Airbnb?
Actually, I played this game before, but I'll play it with you.
Great.
Travel.
Why travel?
I see. I know the answer where this is going. So let's see. How do I draw this out a little bit? Why travel? To discover things.
Why do you want to discover things?
Let's see. What do I discover? To learn.
Why do you want to learn?
To be a better person.
That's tough. Why do you want to be a better person?
So I can be accepted. I want to be more thoughtful if we're really playing this, but I get where you're going with this, and it's actually really, I'm glad you brought it up because it's a powerful thing. So this is the exercise we used when we came up with our mission statement. Like what is the one word that describes the purpose of Airbnb? And the word we came up with after doing this exercise, and by the way, we took our entire executive team and we played this game, and everyone had their answers kind of privately. And the word that almost everybody arrived at was belonging. Like the purpose of Airbnb was belonging, to feel like you could connect with your surroundings, and ultimately not be an outsider but an insider. And so that evolved into our mission statement, which is to create a world where you can belong anywhere. But I think it's a great exercise for people to do because I think it helps you to understand the kind of emotions and the real purpose, like the higher level purpose that you're striving to achieve. I think a lot of people focus on like the what, like what am I doing? What am I doing? But not like how am I going to do that or why am I going to do that? So it's a fun exercise. Thanks.
Okay, final question.
Hi. So, at last but not at least, what would be the best advice that, as a mentor, you could give us?
There's a lot of things. I think the thing I most commonly say is, I'll say first to learn from your failures. Like most entrepreneurs fail and can be discouraged by that. But you should just, build that into your expectation that you will fail, but understand that failure is a learning opportunity. We talk about, most of this conversation has been about kind of Airbnb, or you've probably been focused on Airbnb, but there's a lot of things I did prior to Airbnb. I've been coding since the age of 12 and been an entrepreneur basically since the age of 12. And I spent a lot of time doing a lot of things that didn't actually work out the way I'd hoped. And at the time I was very disappointed and sometimes a little discouraged. But looking back on it, I learned from every single one of those experiences. And that's what makes you a better entrepreneur and eventually successful if you keep getting back up and trying again. I'll also just say in general, like it's important that you're always challenging yourself and learning, because that's what's going to make you successful in the long term. And the other thing I tell people is you got to be persistent. Right? I see too many people quit too soon after 6-9 months because they didn't pace themselves. They didn't think it was going to take a long time. They didn't think it was going to be that hard. They didn't budget what that would cost them. And then another reason why people commonly give up is, if they have a team, the team falls apart. I think the most important decision you'll make is, who are your co-founders? And I think it is really good to have co-founders because it's a hard journey. And if you're doing it yourself, like just even from an emotional perspective, that's hard. When you have a bad day, it's good to have someone else there who's like helping to pick you up and keep going. And then also I think complementary skills are super important too. And no one person has all the skills. So I think that's also something worthy of thinking of. But just if you do have a co-founder, then making sure you and your co-founder are on the same page. Like, are you both prepared to go keep going when the going gets tough. And I'd really kind of try to have that conversation up front, because basically it's a professional marriage. And if you build a company based on your professional marriage and you get divorced, the company's going to fall apart. And I've seen it happen so many times, especially when that happens early on. So, maybe if there's one thing that you might hear a little bit less, then just be persistent and learn from failures. I would say, think very carefully about that founding team, because I think it's critical.
All right, thank you very much, Nathan. All right, so guys, we're gonna move to the cocktail, but just before that, let's make let's shoot a quick photo. We're all gonna be very happy to remember this moment when we're all gonna have this beautiful picture on our desks later. So.
And thank you to all the people who made this event possible. So Startup Launchpad, Airbnb Friends, École 42, Guillaume, who who organized everything, and it was crazy until yesterday. And thank you, Nathan, for making it here today.